Episode of the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. Let's get us going in the community here. Hey, there we go. Guys, today we're going to be talking about how to minimize your risk when you're first starting out in cash physical therapy. We've been hosting weekly free education classes for PTs who have been feeling burnt out, who feel regret and a little bit of guilt over how much student loan debt they have built up and have been unable to create any sort of plan with their current employer and that's going to allow them to gain a little bit more control over their finances and over their time. And so we've been teaching folks how to start their cash practices. And one of the biggest questions that we've gotten is like, how do we do this without risking our careers, without risking getting sued? Like, how do we protect ourselves? And so Ben and I wanted to put together a really quick episode for those of you who are exploring and collecting information, preparing to launch your cash practice, so you know everything that you need to about how to actually go about starting your practice, so all of your bases are covered. So today we're going to be quickly talking about what business formation or what entity type you need to create, as well as what kind of liability insurance you need to get, how much it actually costs, and how easy it really is, because most people think that they need to prepare for months and get all their ducks in a row, and it takes a really long time to do this, but it's actually stupid easy. So let's talk LLCs first, Ben. Why do we need them? What does an LLC do for us?
Yeah, so I want to also start out by saying that this is not, I remember when I got to this point in my practice, like just starting out, I was so worried about liability, worried about, do I need an LLC? Do I need an S Corp? What do I need to be a sole proprietor? Can I just be a sole proprietor? What type of insurance do I need to cover myself? And it seems really daunting and like a lot. Like I've been there, right? I know the feeling, but now I'm past that. It's super simple. And so I'm going to give you guys the cheat code on it. So technically you don't need, so backtrack. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an insurance agent. I'm just telling you my experience and encourage you to consult with professionals in that realm, but I will let you know my experience and what I did. So long story short, you actually don't even need an LLC or an S Corp. I actually worked for a practice owner on the side when I was, they also had a cash-based practice when I was just starting out. I was working alongside them. They're a sole proprietor and they had employees, right? So you don't necessarily need, sole proprietor means that you don't have, you're not protected by any entity like an LLC or an S Corp. So an LLC or an S Corp is just another entity that if you get sued, your personal assets are protected. But what assets do you have? You have $150,000. You want to take my $150,000?
Yeah,
please do, right? So if you don't have a home and you don't have assets and stuff, one, I really wouldn't be too worried about it, especially if it's going to slow you down. You do not need to have an LLC or an S Corp or anything in place. Heck, you don't, like I said, you don't even need that in place altogether. I will tell you what I did. I went the S Corp route. So I went the S Corp route because in the state of California, you have to be an S Corp. You can't be an LLC. Most states, you can be an LLC. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the difference between an S Corp and LLC. You can go on YouTube and look at the videos on the difference of that. But I would encourage, usually S Corps are going to be a little bit more costly to maintain. And I would have went the LLC route if I could, but just stay with California and how it is. That's the reason I went that route.
Question on that. Doesn't California, you can't do an LLC, but don't they require a PLLC, a professional limited liability company? Or do they make you go straight S Corp?
You can go I think you can go PLC.
Yeah.
There's another entity out there. I went with S Corp because I knew that eventually I was going to go from LLC to S Corp. And that's that from a tax advantage standpoint, if you're in the state of California, like the S Corp, again, not a professional tax lawyer or anything like that, or CPA, but that's your mom most likely want to eventually graduate to an S Corp for tax purposes as you grow and scale. Same thing with others that are in other states. You start out with an LLC, and then a lot of times as you grow and scale and approach that like $150,000 mark, usually there's tax advantages switching to an S Corp. So look up your state and see what is required, but 90% plus of the states, you're going to be just fine with an LLC. But again, that's not needed. You do not need to have an LLC. You do not have to have these entities in place to start networking, to start doing this. Like if you're really risk adverse, I mean, you could even see patients. Like I said, I worked for had tons of employees or a couple employees to say, and they were a sole proprietor, right? It just comes down to risk tolerance. I would also encourage you. I was lucky on this in this sense that I just paid a lawyer to do it, mainly because I wanted it done right. It cost me a little bit more per se, but guess what? That time that I would have otherwise had to try and learn all this, I could have been spent networking or marketing, right? And so that allowed me to be more time leverage, and which I more so did because I wanted it done right? But looking back, it actually saved me money, because I was able to really just hit the ground running while that was being done and start networking and whatnot too. So you do not need to have your ducks in a row. You do not have to have that in place to get started.
So I have a different perspective on that because I've started like dozens of LLCs since I was 18 years old. So like, I know how easy it actually is and what an attorney actually does. Like I would consult or just research like which formation you need to have. Like if you're planning on making more than $60,000 in your first year because you're going to actually do this thing, you're not just testing the waters, go straight S corp, because otherwise its tax incentives don't kick in until you're making around $60,000 to $80,000 or bringing in that much profit each year. But if you're like Ben and you're like, I'm building a 7-figure business today, then it makes total sense. For me, like I filed them just over LegalZoom, and it was $100, and you have your LLC or your PLLC within 72 hours. So it was like crazy easy, and that's really all it is. They help you create like the articles of organization that you need. They have templates. It's really, 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 really easy. You don't need like a business plan. You don't get approved for an LLC. You just submit information and it's done. And that's what I think everyone gets hung up on. They're like, is this an approval process? And it is not. Anybody can do it. I did it when I was an 18-year-old idiot.
Yeah. You do not need a business plan. I'll tell you that. I did not have a business plan. I remember we created business plans in PT school, which is kind of cool that we actually had somebody it was kind of ancient approach, but we did business plans in college. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this seems so daunting. And that's where people get hung up. You do not need a business plan. I've not had a business plan I did not have a business plan when I started. We have one of the largest cash-based practices, not the largest in the nation, without a business plan. You do not need a business plan.
Right. Because it's going to change monthly.
Yes. It's going to change. It's going to change the day after you make it.
Right. So just to recap this, you don't need any of these things. It's totally all about your risk, your own like risk tolerance. But an LLC, PLLC, or an S corp, the purpose of it for you is not only for tax incentives, but also to protect your personal assets. Especially if you're married, you might not have a whole lot, but maybe your family does. So get it, protect your personal assets. The next piece is, okay, now that your assets are protected, how do you protect the business's assets? That's where limited or liability insurance comes into play. So there's two types. There's general and then there's professional. Ben, you do a really good job of breaking this down. You want to cover that?
Yeah, general in the simplest sense is like if somebody is walking in the clinic and they trip on something when they're walking in and they fracture their wrist or something like that. That's
the homeless guy out front attacks them or something.
Exactly. Shout out Oakland. And then with regards to professional, it's like if you were to like injure somebody or something like that, from my understanding, that's what professional is. Covers your license as well. So you're going to want both. When I currently have CMNF, they have been great. They have not increased our costs substantially, but I have heard that their costs for a lot of others have skyrocketed. And so I'm not sure if it's the cheapest and most effective one out there anymore. CMNF, HPSO are the two main most common ones. There's a lot of other ones out there. I would recommend CMNF. They're mainly for healthcare professionals, and it's been a good experience from me. But they have also increased their premium costs in the last year and a half. From what I've heard, not on us too much substantially, but a couple others have reported that those have gone up. So that's all you need if you really want to be super protected, LLC or an S corp, and then general and professional liability. But the general and professional liability is not too crazy expensive just starting out, and you should be able to get it for a couple $100.
Right. You have both of them for, I think it's $200. And so between the business filing, between the limited I keep calling it limited liability insurance. Liability insurance, you can have everything covered in a matter of 72 hours for less than $300, which is absolutely crazy how easy it is these days to do it. We just had one of our attendees at one of my seminars where we're teaching about how to like start businesses and step into entrepreneurship as a physical therapist, who took action immediately. She went and filed her LLC. She got her liability insurance. Her only question was, when she's filing, does she file it for herself or does she file it for the company? And so for those of you who are listening right now, I clarified this with Ben because I was actually like, oh yeah, I don't remember the answer to this question. And you file it under the company because everyone working underneath that company is protected by that liability insurance. So you don't need to file it for both yourself and the company.
Right. But if you don't have a company or do the LLC, then obviously you're going to put it under your own personal name.
Right. Super easy. Guys, if you have Ben, anything else that we're missing about this? Because people are going to be surprised. It's like, hey, this was like a 10-minute conversation. That was way too easy. Is it really this easy?
It really is that easy. You only make it hard if you overthink it. It really is super, super easy. And no shame on you guys. Like I was in the same boat. Yeah. I didn't have anybody. I didn't have this podcast to listen to, and I had to figure it out all on my own. Like, what's the right route and all that. And so it took me a lot longer. Thankfully, I was still doing like networking stuff on the side while I was trying to work this and figure this out. Yeah. Where a lot of people get hung up is like just focused on this, and then that's their bottleneck. They feel like that's one other thing too in business is you can't. It's not just doing one thing, then you can do the next, and then you can do the next. You can do multiple things simultaneously. You do not need to check this box to be able to move forward. And if that's the biggest lesson at the beginning of business is do things simultaneously. You don't need to do one thing to be able to, in order to do the next. That's just going to slow you down.
Yep. Dr. Lacey Santana, when she started, she couldn't open her doors for another month, but she launched her LLC. She launched her Facebook business page. Didn't worry about the website, just launched the business page, made a post about here's the gap in healthcare that I'm filling. Here's how I'm filling it. Here are my services. I'm super excited about it. Shared that in the local community Facebook groups, and literally just doing that. And by networking, her entire calendar was full for the first 2 weeks of opening her brand new practice.
That's insane. It's awesome.
Easy. So start the stuff, start building anticipation, get out there, talk about it. It's really, really easy. Making your first 5 figures, your first $10,000 month is really, really easy if you prepare for it and if you build up anticipation and do the work in the meantime and stop treating it like this checklist that you have 3-4 years to, check all those boxes. Just get it done. You can be successful very quick. It's very simple.
100%.
Cool. Awesome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this with a friend who you think deserves to run their own